Welcome to Rewiring Health, the podcast designed to unlock the secrets of self-worth and healing your mind and body. Hello, I'm Dr. Kelly Kessler, physical therapist, transformation coach, and your host. I spent a whole lot of time and energy seeking out a sense of fulfillment through achievement and validation from others, only to feel exhausted, like it was never enough, and even worse, like I was never enough. The thing is, I didn't even know I was abandoning myself in the process of making sure I was meeting the needs of everyone and everything around me, until it significantly impacted my health. Now I live life differently. I live with more peace, more joy, and more freedom in my mind and body. I've uncovered my self-worth, which has allowed me to live more authentically and in alignment with my true self. I see myself and my life through a whole new lens. Are you ready to stop abandoning yourself and begin living your life with more ease and purpose? Let's do this together. I'm so honored to have my guest, Angell Deer, on the podcast today. As the founder of The Sanctuary, a revered Shamanic Healing Center nestled in the heart of the Catskill Mountains, New York, Angell has spent over 9 years fostering a haven for individuals seeking connection with nature and ancient wisdom teachings. Additionally, Angell serves as a founder and executive director of the New York Bee Sanctuary, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection and preservation of bees and wild pollinators. Through his advocacy, research, and education initiatives, Angell has championed the cause of bee conservation on both local and global scales. Angell's career, however, began in the corporate world. With over 2 decades of experience in leadership roles within luxury, retail, and sustainability industries, Angell reached the pinnacle of corporate success. But this was accompanied by a profound realization that the life he was building was lacking meaning. The inner calling led him to embark on a deeper exploration of spirituality and holistic wellness. Drawn to the ancient wisdom of Andean cosmology and Norse shamanism, Angell immersed himself in the study of these traditions, ultimately embracing his purpose as a shaman, mystic, and healer. This was such an amazing conversation. I'm so honored that Angell is on the podcast to share it with you today. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Angell Deer, and I appreciate you being here. And then before we get into all the amazing things I know we're going to talk about today, do you mind just sharing a little bit of your story? How did you get to where you are today and guiding the people through a lot of the things you do today?
Well, that's a long story and a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say, I think I started like many people do. Went to school, I went to university, I got a PhD, and then I worked for big companies and then starting my own startups. And, I was climbing the corporate ladder of success. I was answering to the more Western way of looking at happiness and joy by ticking all those boxes. The house and the money and the wife and just, everything. And then I started to realize by basically the state of my internal affair, my well-being, my emotions, my mind, my lifestyle too, that there was a problem. That somehow I was in this achievement trap, that this hamster wheel, and that it was going to be never enough. And I could see clearly there are many steps to that, but at some point I would see clearly you're going to end up being old and not very fulfilled. And those successes, I started to realize too, that was, I think the big discovery was, what's the purpose of this life? I think every human being, I believe, asks that question, what's the purpose of life? Why are we alive? And I felt that what society was presenting to me did not answer that question very well. And so I started seeking ancient teachings ancient wisdom masters of different lineages, Sufi, ancient Christianity, Kabbalah, Advaita Vedanta, which is Hindu. And then I ended up finding my way into the forest of the Amazon with the Shipibo tribes and doing deep work with them. And then something really clicked, that those people that seems to live a life that's very different than ours, I mean, it is very different than ours, might have some really good answers or better question about life than we ever had in the Western world. And in fact, they are applicable very much to our modern lives. You know, it's not about living in the forest or going back 2,000 years ago. It's about what are elements of wisdom there that could help us live better with ourselves, better with each other's, better with the environment, better with our kids, you know, all of it. And I started doing that for myself. In fact, I did that for myself for many years until people start asking me, hey, your life is amazing. I mean, I don't call my life that way. I love my life. But they're like, what happened to you? What did you do? Can you teach me? There are things, people I can meet, things I can learn. What can I read? And, you know, over the years, the past 10, 15 years now, I've been a teacher of these ancient ways, and I've developed programs to help people step into their power and get out of that achievement trap I mentioned, get out of this way of life that is creating a lot of illnesses, as you mentioned, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything you said, it so resonates with so many of us that we're just seeking something outside ourselves, trying to figure out what do we want? What is that sense of fulfillment, and feeling like we're grasping at straws. And I know you said that there's just something that clicked. Can you describe that a little bit more? Because I know that when we're seeking something, it's like we get in our heads and we're like, is this for me? Is this not for me? How do I know? You know, and you start kind of questioning yourself. What was it for you that really made you realize this is in alignment with me and this feels right?
Well, it's the way you feel when you wake up in the morning. You know, it's that simple. Do I feel joy, excitement, gratitude? I'm really excited to engage with that gift of this new day, right? Because I don't know how long I'm going to live. Do I feel like I have this deep connection with people, with land, with everything? And that makes me feel alive, not just living, alive. And I didn't feel that for so many years, you know, and I was a successful business person, entrepreneur in New York City. Many things that most people would dream of and say, well, that's going to make you fulfill and happy, but it did not, right? And I could just feel that it was something else, and I can just feel how I'm feeling now and how I am, right? But I meet so many people that are feeling the same.
Are you the person who says yes, even though you want to say no? Are you the person who puts your own needs and wants last behind the demands of your work and everyone else in your life? If you answered yes to any of these, you may be self-abandoning, and it does not come without a cost. If you want to know if you're self-abandoning for achievement, take my free quiz in the show notes.
You know, one time, one of the really good coach I work with is say, we were developing, you know, my offering, and he's like, is there something you would like to say to your clients, but you can't tell them because that would be offensive or that would be too much? But there's one thing you would tell them. And what came up to me is that you are living a lie. Your life is a lie. And I can sound really strong, right? I'm not saying everything, all of it is a lie, your kids or this and that. But there is a lie between the way you're living, what you're doing in your life, and what you truly want to do. What your soul or your deeper self or your heart wish to do. And I meet so many people that can relate to that, but feel trapped, feel stuck, and spend years, you know, trying to find a way out of it with the mind, as you mentioned. And the thing is that when we're talking about purpose and life trajectory, it's more a feeling in the belly.
Mm-hmm.
It's more in the body than in the mind. The mind is going to always question it, and have arguments: is this good, is this bad, right? But we're not going to find who we are by using a program that got us in the wrong place,
Mm-hmm.
that has been trained to teach us to be different than who we were when we were little.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have added all those layers into it that have got us away from our essence, our nature. And that's why we are, sick in some ways. That's why we feel discomfort. That's why we experience illness. From a shamanic perspective, illnesses is the top of the iceberg. There is a root behind it that created, misalignment, stuck emotions, many things that brought us to where we are. So in many ways, we have to take a descent into the belly, into the roots, into the soul, into the heart, away from the mind. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to brainstorm our life out of it, our way out of it. Mm-hmm. We're not going to storm the brain, which is already very stormy, by the way. It's interesting we use that term. No, we are going to ground. We're going to face what is there. We're going to open our heart, and then we're going to listen to what is arising. If you would have told me, I don't know, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, this is who I would be, this is what I will be doing, I would have looked at you like you're high, or is it something wrong with you? Like you're crazy, right? I could not see it.
Yeah.
So I could not have taken the steps at the time with what I knew to get there, because it's like I'm telling you to go somewhere, but I don't give you a map or a GPS. Mm-hmm. And those ancient ways, those ancient wisdoms, those techniques that are sometimes very simple, but that we don't use in the Western world, they are the GPS for the soul. Mm-hmm. They are the compass. They are the map. And once you got your map, you're going to find your way. But you need a different map than the one that's been taught to you very often. Right.
Absolutely. And it's like, as you say that, it's like that, Albert Einstein said that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. And so we have to evolve to create a different reality for ourselves. And, I love how you talk about that. It's like, we get all this programming that we have built up over years that are keeping us in this place. And, we can look back at like children and see how free and loving and open they are. And is it society that's creating this? What is creating that basically bogged down feeling that, we don't start out like this, but then we all seem to get to this place where we become adults and have to undo the things that have been done to get back to the place where we started?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. There are so many layers to it. I think, it's not like a simple answer to that.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a way of thinking that is broken, because look at the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A way of being in the world that's broken, because look at the world, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's very obvious for most people I talk to. Mm-hmm. There is also the fact that the world is very driven by consumption and capitalism, and we become product of it. We are the product. So we are geared into productivity. What are we going to produce? What is going to make value from that value system perspective? Mm-hmm. And in that, there is never talked about purpose. There's rarely talk about joy and happiness, or it is talk in a way that in fact is not what true joy and happiness is about. Mm-hmm. There's very rarely talks about meaning. Mm-hmm. There's rarely talk about community and belonging. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that are missing in that programming that we have received. And indeed, we are going to end up far away from who we are. And if we are far from who we are supposed to be, what wants to emerge, there's going to be suffering. Mm-hmm. From a psychological level, emotional level, often physical level, and a spiritual level. Mm-hmm. We're not alive. The spirit is not, kind of bright. We're just robots in a system very often. And it doesn't mean we're always unhappy. We might have things that give us joy. Even our job might give us joy, but we might just know that there is something deeper. I know that every woman, especially because I work mainly with women, that experience that, they're like, yeah, you're right. I'm 40 or 35 or 50 or 60, and I've experienced that in my life. There's this dream. There's this other way, and I want to go into it. I want to change. And it takes a lot of courage and commitments and discipline to do that. And I believe, that's was my experience, that we need people that have been there, that have gone through that. We need the right teachings in order to guide us through it. But most people will not take that road. People will just stay in the suffering and try little things here and there, and maybe listen to this podcast or buy a book or things like that. But to do that change, it requires some level of stamina. The gifts are infinite and immense, but sometimes the comfort of where we are at, or the agreement we have with our discomforts is strong.
Yeah, it's that sense
and
of
we are not
safety.
ready to take this leap of faith and shift into it.
Yeah, it's like that. But the quote, it's like that familiar hell or unfamiliar heaven. It's like, what are you going to stay in? And it becomes that sense of safety because it's predictable, our current situation. And for someone who's maybe listening, who's like, it is that woman who's like maybe her 40s and 50s, and it's like, is there something more? And they're teetering on that, like, do I just take this leap of faith for myself? What's somewhere they could start? Like, what's a place that could really just start to open up their journey and maybe get that first breadcrumb to really dive into more of a place that opens up life for them?
Well, I think one of the first step, and it's something a teacher taught me many, many years ago as I was going through this process. He said to me, you will not change until life as it is become unacceptable. Unacceptable. And I thought it was a very strong word. In fact, I got really upset by it when he told me that, because I was like, no, I really want to change. And he keeps telling me that. He said, no, you still don't really want to. You're still very attached to this personality, the old ways that you are in. And I think we need to come to that point first, where we know that point A is not where we want to be at all anymore. Like, we don't want to live another day that way, because the path is going to require deep, strong work, and it's not easy. And if you have it's not great, but it's also good, I don't think you're going to go through the deep change. And that's okay. It might take you 1 more year, 5 more years, a sudden illness, a divorce, getting fired for your job. Something might happen, like COVID, pushed a lot of people into reflecting on their life. Something might happen that really going to bring you to a point like, okay, this is not my life. And then there are steps, like I mentioned, which is this descent, this really starting to listen to the body instead of fighting it. From a holistic perspective, we look at emotions and discomfort as an opportunity to listen more deeply. Not that there is something really wrong, but that something is trying to speak to us, to tell us something. And we are going to start inquiring into that. That's why the first start is really this grounding, this embodiment, this being with that. And when you do that work, very often you're going to meet a lot of unresolved stuff. In fact, it's not the 45-year-old woman that is afraid to change. It's her 5-year-old version that wanted to belong, that wanted to be loved, and so kind of tame down who she was. Very often you discover things that you thought are fear of, I don't know, money or change for your family, but in fact, they are anchored into older trauma or experience of life that were unpleasant, that told you to be a good girl, to not be loud, to not step up into what you believe in order to stay connected, in order to belong. As human beings, the greatest desire we have is to belong and to be longed for by a community. So we want to be belonging there, and we want that community to really long for us. We want those deep connections.
Yeah.
And we will very often sabotage ourselves or tame down ourselves or wear a mask in order to achieve that at great cost. At great cost. On the long term, it has massive cost on so many aspects of our life. And when you wear a mask for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, it's very hard to remove. In fact, it's very hard to see what is the mask and what is you.
Yeah.
You might not even see that you're wearing a mask. You might think that, no, this is who I am. Sometimes I have clients that say, no, this is really who I am. I say, okay, let's inquire into it.
Yeah.
Let's be curious, right? Let's open to it. So yeah, there is first, I think that's one of the most important steps, because once you turn inwards, once you start opening to that, you start to listen to other voices than just your mind, than just the outer world. You start to listen to inner voices. And then the heart voices start to open.
Yeah.
And then something that, I don't like to speak hoo-hoo too much, but some of my clients are, and I can be too, speaking that. But I think what really happened is that there is this essence, what we call spirit, what we call soul, what we call, I don't know, who we are really deep down, that arise because someone, as me, when I do that work, is interested about that and say, you know what, I'm going to start listening. And naturally we become it. We're a little bit like the acorn from an oak tree that has been planted in the wrong place and is not growing well. There's nothing wrong with the acorn. What's wrong is the soil. What's wrong is the environment. What's wrong is probably with the acorn. If the acorn believes it's a rose tree, it's going to be really not like what he sees in the mirror every morning.
Yeah.
But you can't really fix an acorn. We can't fix a person. What we need is to remove the falsity, all the layers that are not us.
Yeah.
And that's such an empowering process, because it's not about me telling you what you are. It's about me giving you tools to unlayer that and discover it for yourself. And I don't think people are taught very often in the Western world to discover themselves that way, to be self-empowered. And there is something really liberating when you do that process. And that's usually what gives you the stamina, the discipline, the courage to invest resources into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're completely right. Yeah, with that, I mean, to listen to your own voice, it's like there's so many messages that somebody knows you better than you know yourself, or someone has the authority outside yourself. And it's very easy to conform to that because especially if you've been brought up in this society, it is very easy to say like, oh, I'm sick, I need to do X, Y, and Z because that's what someone's telling me to do. Instead of being like, I'm sick, okay, like how do I listen to my body? How do I allow myself to heal and really tune into that? And one other thing you talked about was the emotions. When you're in some of these emotional states, listening to that and trying to understand that rather than thinking there's something wrong with you. And I think that's another big place we disconnect from ourselves. Maybe you're grieving, maybe you're depressed, or experiencing some anxiety symptoms, and instead of approaching it with curiosity, we try to either shut it down or numb it or do things that don't allow us to dive deeper into that. And unfortunately, that seems to be very commonplace. And in that journey, listening to yourself, there's a huge component to that trust. How do you start to cultivate trust within yourself when maybe you've trusted everybody else's voice over your own, or everybody else's opinions or expectations over your own? How do you start to dive into trusting yourself again?
Yeah, I mean, that is one step at a time process, right? You don't just wake up with that full trust when you never had it, when you have outsourced your power to others all the time. That's what we do, right? I don't know, so I'm going to ask this person or that. Nobody has told me I have wisdom, infinite wisdom. And in fact, the reason there is discomfort in my life is because there is a fight between who I am and this wisdom. It's already there. If not, there would be no discomfort. You'll be perfectly aligned. So it's already speaking to you. You already know. Deep down, you know this is not your life. Deep down, you know you don't want to live that way, right? And we're not going to try to look at, okay, who can fix that? I mean, if you break your legs, yes, go to the surgeon, go to the hospital, right? There's many things where you need a specialist. You need someone that knows how to do that. But here we're talking about who you are, your essence. Don't tell me there is someone out there that know your essence better than you. It's not possible. It doesn't make any sense, right? You are the master of your own life. You are the one that know. And in fact, where you are at is because you mastered your life this way. Maybe with wrong guidance. Maybe, you didn't know. But so when it comes to the self and finding that, it's like, okay, I made all those decisions that were not based on true wisdom. That got me where I am based on other people's opinion and my family and whatever. Do I want you to continue that way? What are every single tradition in the world, Western and Eastern, Christianity, Kabbalah, Hinduism, Native Americans, what are they telling us that is about the soul, the essence, and to go about it? They're all telling you to go inwards. There's a reason monks are in monasteries, in places where they have no contact, in order to be in contact with God. In that silence. There's a reason people go in silent retreats. There's a reason Jewish people do the Sabbath once a week, disconnect, which I think everybody should do it, by the way. Take a day off devices and all of that. There's a reason there is Vipassana retreat in the Eastern world. And there's a reason Native Americans goes on vision quest alone for 5 days in nature. It's literally everywhere. It has different names, different practices, right? But it shows us that when we get science, once we go in, we get answers, a different quality of answers. Once you start getting that, you get a little piece of it and you apply it to your life and you see how you are feeling, you build trust in yourself. Because I could tell you for 6 hours about all the techniques and all of that and what you should do until you have an experience of it. And
do it. Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, I did this. This is what happened. And you know what? That sounds like a crazy idea, but it feels so right. That's often what my client says. You know what? I have this vision. It sounds really crazy, but I don't know. It feels like home. Like it feels like in my gut. So that's how you build this inner trust. You're learning to start listening to another place in you that, in fact, has been telling you for 20 years, your gut feeling, this is wrong. It's not like it was not there. It's just that you were not taught how to listen to it. You didn't trust that part of you speaking and see where it got you.
Yeah.
And the other, tradition, peoples, things that can help you in order to connect to that and reclaim your power, reclaim really your health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, in a way that is beyond your wildest dream very often. I mean, sometimes I see clients 2 years later and they're like, I don't know, they quit their job and they wrote a book and they are published authors and are doing public engagements. And those people could not even answer a question 2 years before. Before we start working together, they were so shy and they were afraid of their voice. And here they are, right? So I know it's there in everyone. I never go to someone and say, oh, you're broken, I'm so sorry for you, and say, no, you're a powerful being. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
You don't know how to access it. And the good news is there is a way to do that. The bad news is you've been doing something else for a very long time. So that's going to take some steps to kind of unbuild what you've built around your heart, around your soul, around your essence.
Yeah, I love that. And just like even my own experience, because I was someone who very much lacked trust within myself. And it has been that experience, and it almost was like an inner knowing, like you just know something deep inside of you that there's a different path. And then it's like you open up one door and you're like, oh yeah, this feels right. And yeah, it's like, so I love how you share that, because that's been my experience too, just like taking the next step. I mean, you might not
Mm,
know the whole destination, but it's that next step and just trusting that you're being led by something bigger than yourself.
mhm.
So I absolutely love that. And it goes so far beyond, many things that you often see are like, here's 20 ways to trust yourself. And it seems like such a quick thing, but it is really just that, that's not it. It is what you, as you describe, it is that life experience, leaning into yourself, quieting the mind, disconnecting, and realizing that you have the power within yourself. And I love that message. And
Yeah, and it's not I think what you mentioned here is really important because it's not the how, right? There's a zillion books on self-help. There are, tons of workshops. There's, plenty of podcasts, and they're good, right? They're good information, and there are a lot about the how. For me, at least in my process, was the who.
mm-hmm,
Who has done that? Who has a proven method? Who
mm-hmm,
has a life experience doing that? So who can guide me into that? The
mm-hmm,
how, they are going to come into it, right? But
mm-hmm,
I was more interested to say, okay, who has done that? And clearly, in the place I was living, there was nobody there. So I had to go find it. I spent years, finding the who's and learning from them because I
mm-hmm,
think that's really important. We often make the mistakes like, okay, so I'm going to take a class on this and I'm going to start yoga and I'm going to do meditation. And
mm-hmm,
well, you'll be surprised. I mean, I have clients sometimes that they've been meditating for 40 years.
mm-hmm.
I'm not saying don't do meditation, right? Because that's a great tool
Yeah.
and that's powerful. But the problem is that you need a roadmap.
Mm-hmm,
You need someone that can guide you into it.
mm-hmm,
So who do you trust?
mm-hmm,
And if you keep trusting, if the who is your family, but they're not happy, if the who is your boss, but is not you and it's not your life, that the life that you want, is this the who you want to listen to in order to become who you really wish to be?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's like there's another quote. It's like, if you want to go somewhere in life, ask the people who are coming back, because they've forged that path already. They know what it is. I love it because it is a quickest way to expedite your life is to be guided by someone who's already gone through that, and mirror that journey very
I mean,
much.
I have, 3 teachers. I've worked with coach my whole life. It doesn't matter what I've achieved today. I'm
Yeah.
still getting coached literally every day.
Yeah.
I connect to my coach every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, because my biggest passion is to discover who I am, to
Mm-hmm.
keep discovering. It's infinite, to keep
Mm-hmm.
growing, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
committing to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I didn't do that, if I just read the books, I don't think I'd be where I am. It's
Mm-hmm.
because I had sometimes someone telling me, things I didn't want to hear,
That's
that I
true.
didn't like. My first coach,
Yep.
one time I didn't talk to him for 3 months. I was so upset by what he
Yeah.
told me because he was not here for me to love him. He was here
Yep.
to kick my ass. He was here to make me step out of who I was, and I needed to hear things that I didn't want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And was not ready for it at the time. And then I came back to him and I said, thank you. But yeah, sometimes it's going to be difficult to be confronted with a clean mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know?
And sometimes you need that perspective to see that within yourself.
Yes.
Many times. Yeah. Yep. And I love how you share is like that there is discomfort in this. This doesn't mean that even because it brings you to a better place and brings you more joy, there's discomfort in the path.
If
That's
there's no discomfort, you're not doing the work. It
it's
means
just
you're in
avoiding
your
it.
comfort zone. There's no growth. We want to go
Exactly.
to the edge and beyond. This is going to be
Hmm.
uncomfortable and scary and potentially difficult, but extraordinary at the same time. That's
Hmm.
for me a sign that you're struggling with a practice and something is hitting back, meaning we're on the edge.
Hmm.
Meaning we are pushing the growth.
Yeah.
We're expanding your capacity to be with the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is about. It's like discovering this unknown, right?
Hmm. I love that. And I want to go back because you're talking about nature and the healing qualities of nature. And can you talk about that a little bit more? Like, can nature provide someone who maybe is feeling very disconnected from themselves or is struggling with some health impacts? How can they really tune into nature and really allow nature to give them those natural healing properties?
Yes, that's something that's present in all the ancient teachings, native teachings around the world. The idea is that nature lives in alignment with itself, each part of it. You will not find one tree in the forest that question its purpose, that doesn't know who he is or she is or it is. You will not find a river that does that. You will not find an insect that does that. You will not find a flower that do that. You will not find the stars or sky that do that. So there are a set of laws and instructions in nature to guide life, for abundance, for development, for prosperity, for relation and connection. It's embedded in the way nature is. And when you disrupt the place, when you cut a forest, when nature is going to start taking over, and if we don't touch it for a century, it's going to come back to what it was. It remembers itself. It comes back. It doesn't like, oh, I'm too broken, I give up. No, nature doesn't do that. I mean, there is death in nature, there is illness in nature, but overall the system is designed for that fostering of life and growth and expansion. So when we have disconnected from that because of our lifestyle, because of our culture, because of what we believe in our stories, and you reconnect yourself to it, you're putting yourself in the presence of teachers. So it's not just, I'm going to sit in nature because it feels really good and I can relax, because nature is relaxed. So you're going to experience that just by the vibration around. And I'm sure everybody experiences that in a forest, on a beach, in a mountain, near a stream. There's something that is happening, right? Beyond the mind. But it's also because everywhere you can look at, you can find those teachings that you're looking for. Like, how come this little tiny insect knows its purpose, its life, and go about it without ever going to school, without ever reading a book, and I don't? I'm so confused and lost. I remember as a child being really interested by that. I was fascinated by ants. It's a story I've shared a few times, but I was looking at them and said, like, they're so organized. They just understand. And now I'm a beekeeper out of many things I do. And I find the same fascination with the bees. So that's the first surface, right? You're going to go into contact with it. It's going to reflect back to you some kind of energy, some kind of teachings. But then there's a second layer, which is to inquire into it, to ask questions. And that, for a lot of Western people, start to be a little bit out there. Like, what are you talking about? But there is this possibility to communicate. Not in a conversation that looks like maybe our conversation at the beginning. It might look a bit different, but at some point could be like that. It's very much like learning a new language, right? If I go to China tomorrow, I don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese or any of the language in China. I'm not going to understand anything. I might even say, well, they don't speak. It's just noise. So very often people go, when we do this practice, they're like, they don't really speak, or I don't hear anything, or yeah, because they're speaking a different way. So we have to learn a new language, and that takes a bit of time. But it works with languages. If you don't know any language and you immerse yourself in that culture without translation, within 6 months, you're going to be fluent in that language. Without nobody translating anything, just by living with people, listening to TV. You know, when I went to Peru the first time, I didn't speak Spanish, but now I've been going for so long and so often I can speak Spanish, but I never took a lesson in Spanish. Just by immersing myself. And in nature, it's the same. By immersing yourself with deeper connection and certain practices and ways to do it, at some point, there's an intelligence in you that emerge that's going to reflect back and communicate with that. And if I'm listening to a teacher that is wise, which I believe those teachers in nature are, then I'm going to get some wisdom for myself. And I know it sounds very strange for most Western mind that a tree could have wisdom for a human being or a river. But I would be surprised that the people that say that never experience a vision or a stream of insight as they walk in the forest. Mm-hmm. Never had an idea that they never had before. Never thought about something they never thought about before when they were in nature. Mm-hmm. That's how it can look like.
Yeah.
That when your mind comes to rest, when you are in a different kind of vibration, something else arises. Mm-hmm. Is it their voice? Is it my voice? Is it a community voice? I don't always know. But some quality of thought, of wisdom arise when we do that. So it's a big part of the process. Not the only one, but it's definitely a place where we can go meet teachers without ego, without an agenda over us, right? They're just being. Mm-hmm. And so that's also the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, it's just those subtleties, because I know exactly what we're talking about that. It's like those little messages that they're not screams in your face like we're kind of used to in society. It's like glaring. It's like those little messages that just kind of pop in your head and you're like, oh, and I think it is like in those quiet moments that you can have those. But I think for so many of us, it's like we're so bombarded by things. It's like you can really almost miss those things because you're used to being so overstimulated and having to have it so in your face that it can be hard to like conceptualize that when you're used to those overstimulating environments.
Yeah, we live in a very loud world. Screen are loud, the world is loud, we're all of machines and people and screens. And here we're talking about whispers. If your soul voice was more loud than your brain, you would have heard it by now. You would have made the right decision. But those voices are a bit more settled. They're a little whisper. It doesn't mean they know less. In fact, they probably know more. They're not shouting. So yeah, there is often a need to fine tune or tune ourselves to listening to a different level of noise, a different level of information, a whisper instead of a loud scream.
Yeah. 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 I love that. And so I want to just like go into one more thing because you've mentioned a few times, and it's something I think for society now is something that's not as common, and that's that sense of community and feeling like, you're mentioning belonging. And in today's society, it feels very much like we're all on our own. We're on an island. We're feeling this sense of scarcity. We're competing against each other for everything. We're lacking trust in other people. We're lacking maybe communication that's helpful. And can you talk about community and how that plays a huge role in our healing, our connection, our evolution of ourselves?
Yes, I mean, we have evolved over tens of thousands of years through community living. Like literally being born in a place, living in a whole place our whole life and dying there. That's pretty much how human beings evolved. I mean, some were migrating and moving, but the group of people that we were with, we were born with, we will die with, right? The same families, the same groups. So that was also what gave us safety against the natural world, the wild world, against, invaders and other things. So there's a deep connection with belonging and safety. In fact, leaving your tribe, you're talking 50,000 years ago, would have been a death sentence. There was big animals out there. You will die without your tribe, right? And that's been how our brain evolved, how we evolve over time. You add to this layer the fact that we are interconnected to the whole, that we can feel emotions. I'm sure all of you can come into a room and talk to someone or even not talk to them and just feel what's going on. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they afraid? Are they kind, without any word? So we're interconnected. We're looking for belonging. And that's hardwired. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, what you learn, it's there. So we are always going to look for that. So now we've severed the connection to community. We don't grow up really like our ancestors did. We lost not just connection to the land we were living on for most of us, but we also lost connection to traditions, maybe even to the food. I do a lot of ancestral work with people and say, what did your great-grandmother cook? Cook that. Reconnect to your food, right? So we are grieving a loss that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We're grieving something that we've lost, but that we've never known in this life. But it's there. And we are living now in a new world, a modern world, as we call it, which doesn't work for us in some ways. That we are kind of aware that it works for some, but even if it worked for me, it doesn't really fully work. I don't experience that kind of feeling of relaxation and joy and all of that. So we are orphans in between those two worlds. We're trying to find communities and belonging in a world that doesn't really look like what we want, but that's the only one available. So we just, try to belong there. And all the prime we talked about earlier by doing that. Mm-hmm. But what we're truly looking for is a different kind of connection to the self and to each other's. And then each other's you can expand to the land, to nature, to, the greater realms that's out there. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, why a lot of the healing and transformation traditionally has always been done in community, mm-hmm. in groups. Mm-hmm. If you have grief, you don't cry alone. Everybody comes and grieves with you. It's still very present in many traditions, religious tradition, where there's grieving time. Mm-hmm. So we need that aspect in the work we do of transformation, because if we are alone, and that's why I said woo, not how. Mm-hmm. If you are alone, that's very difficult to do that, because we're not wired for it. It's just not human. Mm-hmm. It's not kind. It's hardly possible. A lot of the healing in our world that we're looking for is going to happen when we all come to the table together. Mm-hmm. I guess it's how it has to be. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do that, we might not be able to really fix the mess we're in, right? We will have to in some ways. And you will find that in all of, healing circles and more holistic ways now that includes more and more group therapy or groups healings. And that's what AA is doing. That's what many modern, I would say, healing modalities are doing that in some ways, right? Mm-hmm. But there's still a long way to go in order to really reclaim that. And if you don't feel that, if you don't have that, and you feel very alone and lonely, that's normal. You feel that way. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. There's nothing broken with you. Mm-hmm. You're just feeling into the essence of your being. And so very often, as you do this transformation work, very often people don't want to do it because they're afraid of losing whatever community they have, mm-hmm. by becoming someone else, and that they might be alone in that. And that's usually one of the unconscious resistance into the work that we don't know. It's prefrontal cortex. It's our old fear, safety, mm-hmm. that plays like, well, if I change too much, what this part of the brain is saying, say, you're going to die. Mm-hmm. No, you're going to be lonely. It tells you you're going to die. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the frontal cortex and your rational mind is like, well, I don't know, because this and that is going to find a story around that. But really, there is a primal fear of being disconnected. If you leave your city or your tribe today in a city in modern living, you're not going to be attacked by a lion, right? I mean, mm-hmm. most places in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So they are not always rational fears, mm-hmm. right? But because we have been wired that way, because we evolved that way, they are real. Mm-hmm. They are real. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because it can be so easy to get stuck into that trap of feeling like I can do this on my own. I'm fine. I'll figure it out. And to realize that this is how we are literally wired, that we're meant to be supported and guided by other people, and part of that, and realize that mm-hmm. that's actually bolstering that healing process, and not it's not meant to be alone. And
yeah, it's an individualistic society we're living in. Yeah. So we are going to believe anything we do, even our spiritual transformation or personal transformation, needs to be done alone in some ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have this belief that, yep. We are separated, right?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, and I hope for anyone who's listening to this, hearing this message, really, maybe you take the next step to finding another community, maybe, or a community that can help you, guide you, and where you're meant to be, and help you along that journey. But I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's such a beautiful message of understanding that we're meant to be around people, and also that subconscious resistance that we feel because of that sense of belonging that we have and where we are now, but then the evolution questioning where we may end up and where our group is after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in my experience, as you change, community appears in some ways.
Yeah.
Because you're a different person and you pay attention to different things. And yeah, there might be a moment of aloneness and loneliness, which sometimes is necessary to do really deep work. You can be connected to too many people. But as you start to emerge from the cocoon as another being, a different community show up. That's been my experience personally, and also with so many people I work with, that I say, okay, don't worry, that will appear. But that community that looks different, you need to also shift who you are first. And as you are this new being, you will have a new community appearing, right? There's so many people that are doing this work. So many people that resonate with what we shared. So you're not alone, right? You may be alone where you live or in that instant, but I can tell you that in that street, someone thinks the same. And it's much closer to you than you think, right? At the supermarket, you pass by people that are experiencing the same thing. So you might not see it yet, but it's there. Yeah. And it's coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're so much more connected than I think we often realize in this. We're all connected through so many things and have so many paralleling experiences that it's undeniable.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for being here. And for someone who wanted to connect with you, and how can they find you? Where can they find you?
Well, they can go on my website, and I think you're going to put the link under that. If they are interested to explore the program I do, the Sacred Purpose Blueprint, they can go on Angell Deer. So it's Angell with 2 L, deer like the animal, angelldeer.com/register. There's a free webinar people can watch where I go a bit more in depth about what we talk about today. I also, have a podcast and I write a lot. I write every day. I have a book out there called The Sacred Web that people can find on Amazon. So you can look for The Sacred Web, Angell Deer. Just find me through the web tentacles out there.
Yep. And I'll put everything in the show notes too. So if you're listening to this, definitely check that out so you can connect with Angell. And again, thank you so much for everything you shared today. I know that someone is going to listen to this and this may have been the next step forward in their life. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for everyone who's tuned in today, and thank you for spending your precious time with us. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.